The station smelled like rust and desperation. And Marcus Cole had learned long ago that nothing good ever came from places like this. He walked through the narrow corridors with his hand resting near his pistol. Watching the alien faces that turned to study him as he passed humans were rare out here on the edge of known space. And most species looked at them with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Marcus did not care what they thought of him. He was a salvager. A man who made his living pulling broken ships apart and selling the pieces to anyone who would pay it was not glamorous work. But it kept him fed and kept his ship flying. And that was enough for a man who had left Earth behind 15 years ago today. He had come to collect a debt. A Valorian merchant named Thresh owed him 3,000 credits for emergency hull repairs. And Marcus intended to get his money one way or another. He found Thresh in a small cargo bay near the bottom of the station, surrounded by crates that looked older than the station itself. The Valorian was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. And when he saw Marcus approaching, his yellow eyes went wide with fear. "Human," Thresh said, his voice trembling. "I was going to contact you." "I swear it." Marcus stopped a few feet away and crossed his arms over his chest. "You were supposed to pay me 2 weeks ago." "Thresh, I know," the merchant said, wringing 2 of his hands together while the other 2 gestured wildly. "But business has been terrible, and the collective raised their taxes again, and I simply do not have the credits." Marcus felt his jaw tighten with frustration. Had heard this story 100 times before from 100 different aliens, and he was tired of it. "Then we have a problem," he said, "because I need those credits to keep my ship running." Thresh's eyes darted around the cargo bay as if searching for an escape route. But there was nowhere to go. Then something changed in his expression, and he held up all 4 hands in a gesture of surrender. "Wait," he said. "I have something else. Something valuable. I do not want junk from your cargo hold." "Not junk," Thresh insisted, and he turned to gesture toward the shadows at the back of the bay. "Come here, girl." Marcus watched as a figure emerged from the darkness, and his breath caught in his throat. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin was pale violet, almost lavender in the dim light, and her hair was long and white like fresh snow. Her eyes were silver, bright and strange, and they stared at the floor as she walked forward with small, careful steps. She wore simple clothes that were torn and dirty, and her feet were bare against the cold metal deck around her left wrist. She wore a strip of cloth that was wrapped tight, as if hiding something beneath. "This is Kira," Thresh said. "She is a servant, trained and obedient, and she's worth far more than 3,000 credits." Marcus stared at the alien girl, then back at Thresh, and he felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You want to give me a person as payment," he said. "And it was not a question. She is just a servant," Thresh said quickly. "Many species keep them. It is perfectly normal out here. Not for humans." The merchant made a sound of frustration. "You humans and your strange ideas about everything. She is property, nothing more, and I am offering her to you as fair trade." Marcus looked at the girl again. She still had not raised her eyes from the floor, and her shoulders were hunched as if she expected to be struck at any moment. He had seen that posture before, on refugees fleeing war zones and prisoners rescued from pirate ships. It was the posture of someone who had learned that hope was dangerous. "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked. Thresh shrugged with all 4 shoulders. "Then I cannot pay you, and you will have to take your complaint to the station authorities, who will laugh you out of their office, because I have friends here and you do not." Marcus knew the merchant was right out here on the fringe. There was no real law, only power and connections. He had neither. He looked at the girl one more time, and this time she glanced up at him for just a moment. Her silver eyes met his, and he saw something there that he had not expected. Not fear, not submission, but something else, something that looked almost like a question. "What will you do with me?" Those eyes seemed to ask. Marcus made his decision. Fine, he said. I accept. Thresh grinned with too many teeth and clapped two of his hands together. Excellent. She is yours now, human, and our debt is settled. The merchant hurried away before Marcus could change his mind. Leaving him alone with the alien girl, she stood perfectly still, waiting for orders that Marcus had no intention of giving. Can you walk? He asked. She nodded once, a small and hesitant motion. Then, follow me. He turned and headed back toward the docking bay where his ship waited. And after a moment, he heard her soft footsteps behind him. The other aliens on the station watched them pass with knowing smirks and whispered comments. Marcus ignored them. All his ship was called the Wanderer, and it was not much to look at. The hull was patched in a dozen places. The paint had faded years ago, and the engines made sounds that no engine should make, but it was home. And when Marcus led the girl up the boarding ramp and into the cargo hold, he felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. He turned to face her. Listen, he said. I do not know what you have been told about humans, but I am not going to treat you like a servant. She looked at him with confusion in her silver eyes. I do not understand. You are not my property, Marcus said firmly. You are a person, and as long as you are on my ship, you will be treated like one. But I was given to you as payment. I do not care. He could see that she did not believe him, and he supposed he could not blame her. She had probably been passed from owner to owner her whole life. Told what to do and punished when she failed. Trust would take time. What is your name again? He asked. Kira, she said softly. All right, Kira. I have a spare cabin that is small but clean, and you can stay there for as long as you want. For as long as I want? She repeated, as if the words did not make sense. That is what I said. She stared at him for a long moment, and Marcus could see her trying to understand what was happening. Finally, she spoke again. What do you want me to do? Nothing, Marcus said. Rest, eat something, take a shower if you want. We will figure the rest out later. He showed her to the small cabin and left her there, closing the door behind him to give her privacy. Then he went to the cockpit and began the launch sequence, eager to put this station behind him as the Wanderer lifted off and headed into the black void of space. Marcus found himself thinking about the girl. She was a mystery. That much was clear. The way she moved, the way she held herself. It did not match the story of a simple servant, and that cloth wrapped around her wrist, hiding whatever was beneath. He had seen her touch it several times, always with the same expression of pain and loss. There was something she was not telling him. Marcus had learned long ago that everyone had secrets, and sometimes the kindest thing you could do was give people space to share them in their own time. So he set a course for the nearest trade hub and let the ship carry them forward into the unknown behind him. In the small cabin, Kira sat alone on a narrow bed and stared at the walls for the first time in years. No one was watching her. No one was giving her orders. No one was telling her who to be. She did not know what to do with the feeling. She unwrapped the cloth from her wrist and looked at the mark that had been burned into her skin so long ago. It was a symbol that most of the galaxy had forgotten. A symbol that belonged to an empire of ashes and ghosts, and she was its last surviving heir. The human did not know what he had taken aboard his ship, and Kira was not sure if she should tell him the truth had killed everyone who had ever tried to protect her. Perhaps it would be better to say nothing. Perhaps it would be better to simply disappear. But as she thought about the strange human and his even stranger kindness, she felt something stir in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. 3 months had passed since Marcus took Kira aboard the Wanderer, and in that time she had slowly begun to change. She no longer flinched when he spoke to her, and sometimes she even smiled when he made his terrible jokes about engine parts and space food. Marcus had given her work to do, not because he demanded it, But because she had asked for it, she helped him sort salvage, clean the ship, and prepare meals in the tiny galley. She was good with machines, better than Marcus had expected, and her small hands could reach places in the engine that his larger ones could not. They had fallen into an easy routine, and Marcus had almost forgotten that she was supposed to be a mystery. Almost. He still noticed the way she watched the stars through the viewport every night. Her silver eyes searching for something he could not see. Still noticed the way certain alien merchants looked at her with fear before hurrying away, and he still noticed the cloth around her wrist, hiding the mark she never spoke about, but he did not ask, because he had promised himself he would give her time. That promise was about to be broken. They were docked at a small refueling station in the Korath sector. When the collective enforcers arrived, Marcus heard them before he saw them. The heavy boots marching down the corridor toward his ship with the kind of purpose that meant trouble. He stepped out of the Wanderer to meet them, hoping to keep them away from Kira. There were 5 of them, all wearing the black armor of the collective, the coalition that ruled most of the known galaxy. Their leader was a tall alien with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that held no warmth. Marcus Cole? The leader asked, though it was clear he already knew the answer. That is me, Marcus said, keeping his voice calm. What can I do for you? We are searching for a fugitive, the enforcer said. A female of the Valorian subspecies with violet skin and silver eyes. Last seen in the company of a human salvager. Marcus felt his heart begin to beat faster, but he kept his expression neutral. A fugitive? What is she accused of? The enforcer stepped closer, and Marcus could smell something sharp and chemical on his breath. That is not your concern. Human, you will hand her over to us immediately, or you will be charged with harboring an enemy of the collective. An enemy of the collective? Marcus repeated. She is just a servant girl. There must be some mistake. There is no mistake. The enforcer reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small holographic projector. He activated it, and suddenly the air between them was filled with an image. It showed a symbol, ancient and complex, like a flame wrapped in chains. Marcus recognized it immediately. It was the same symbol that was burned into Kira's wrist. This is the mark of the Vercerin bloodline, the enforcer said. The royal family of the Ashenvale Dominion, an empire that we destroyed 200 years ago for the good of the galaxy. Marcus stared at the symbol, his mind racing. We have spent generations hunting the Vercerin line to extinction, the enforcer continued. And we will not allow the last heir to escape. The last heir. Marcus thought about Kira, about her strange grace and her archaic speech, about the way she sometimes looked at the stars as if mourning something lost. He thought about the merchant who had given her to him so eagerly, as if desperate to be rid of her. It all made sense now. She was not a servant at all. She was a princess, the last survivor of a fallen empire. And the collective wanted her dead. I'm going to search your ship now, the enforcer said. And if I find her, you will both be taken into custody. Marcus knew he should step aside. He knew he should let them take her, because fighting the collective was suicide. No one fought the collective and won. No one was that crazy. But then he thought about Kira sitting in her small cabin, finally starting to believe that she might be safe. He thought about the trust in her silver eyes, the trust he had worked so hard to earn, and he thought about what his father had told him long ago, back on Earth, before Marcus had ever dreamed of leaving. The measure of a man is not what he does when it is easy, but what he does when it is hard. Marcus took a deep breath and made his choice. No, he said. The enforcer blinked, his scaled face showing confusion for the first time. What did you say? I said no. You are not searching my ship, and you are not taking anyone from it. The enforcer let out a sound that might have been a laugh. You are one human with a broken ship and no weapons. Do you really think you can stop us? Probably not, Marcus admitted. but I am going to try." He moved fast. Faster than the enforcers expected, his fist connected with the leader's face. And there was a satisfying crunch as scales cracked beneath his knuckles. Then he was running, sprinting back toward the Wanderer, while shouts erupted behind him. Kira was waiting at the top of the boarding ramp, her eyes wide with fear. "Marcus, what is happening?" "Get inside," he shouted. "Seal the door behind us." She did not argue. The moment they were inside, she hit the emergency seal, and the heavy door slammed shut just as weapons fire began to strike the hull. Marcus ran to the cockpit and threw himself into the pilot's seat. His fingers flew across the controls, and the engine screamed to life. "What are you doing?" Kira asked, her voice shaking. "Getting us out of here. They will follow us. Then we will outrun them." He pulled back on the throttle, and the Wanderer tore away from the docking clamps with a grinding shriek of metal. More weapons fire streaked past the viewport as the collective ship tried to disable them. But Marcus was already pushing the engines beyond their limits. The jump drive hummed to life, and he punched in coordinates for the first empty system he could find. "Hold on," he said. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, hurtling through the void faster than light when they emerged on the other side. There was nothing around them but darkness and distant stars. Marcus let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. They were safe for now. He turned in his seat to look at Kira, and he saw tears streaming down her violet cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you do that?" "Because they were going to hurt you. You do not understand," she said. "They will never stop hunting me. They will chase us across the entire galaxy, and they will kill anyone who helps me." "Then tell me," Marcus said gently. "Tell me who you really are." She was silent for a long moment, and then she reached down and unwrapped the cloth from her wrist. The mark was there, just as he had expected, burned into her skin like a brand. But now that he looked at it closely, he could see how intricate it was, how beautiful in its complexity. "My name is not Kira," she said softly. "My name is Keleth Versarin, and I am the last surviving heir of the Ashen Vale Dominion." She told him everything. She told him about the empire her ancestors had built, how it had stretched across half the galaxy and brought peace to 1,000 worlds. She told him about the collective, how they had feared the Dominion's power and launched a war of extermination. She told him about her mother, the last empress, who had burned the royal mark into her daughter's wrist before sending her away with trusted servants. "Everyone who has ever tried to protect me has died," Kira said. "My mother, my guardians, everyone. The collective finds them and kills them." "The merchant," Marcus said. "The one who gave you to me. He was supposed to keep me safe, but he got scared. I think he told them about me to save himself." Marcus processed this information, and he felt anger rising in his chest, not at Kira, but at the galaxy that had made her run and hide for her entire life. "So the collective wants you dead because you are the heir to a throne that does not exist anymore," he said. "If I live, I am a symbol," Kira explained, "a reminder of what they destroyed. There are still those who remember the Dominion, who would fight to see it restored, and the collective cannot allow that hope to exist." Marcus nodded slowly. "And what do you want?" he asked. Kira looked at him with surprise, as if no one had ever asked her that question before. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have spent my whole life running. I never had time to want anything." Marcus stood up from his seat and walked over to her. He knelt down so that their eyes were level, and he took her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said. "I do not care if every fleet in the galaxy comes after us. I am not going to let them hurt you. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are kind and smart and brave. I know you deserve better than a life of fear. And I know that giving you up would be wrong." "Human ideas," she said. But there was a small smile on her lips. "Human ideas," he agreed. Now get some rest. We have a lot of running to do." Kira looked at him for a long moment. And then she did something she had never done before. She hugged him. It was quick and awkward. But Marcus felt his heart swell with something warm when she pulled away. She was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since he had met her. "Thank you, Marcus. Do not thank me yet," he said. "We still have to survive." But as he watched her walk away toward her cabin, he made a silent promise he would protect her, no matter what it cost, because that was what humans did. The chase had lasted 6 months, and Marcus had lost count of how many times they had nearly died. They had fled through dead systems where ancient wars had left nothing but dust and debris that hidden in nebulae, so thick with radiation that their shields had nearly failed. They had survived on salvage and stolen fuel and meals that tasted like metal and desperation, but they were still alive. And that was more than most people expected. The collective had offered bounties that could buy entire planets for information about the human and his alien. Companion mercenaries came after them. Drawn by the promise of wealth beyond imagination, assassins crept onto stations where they docked, seeking to end the hunt with a single blade in the dark. None of them succeeded, because Marcus was not just running anymore. He was fighting back, and he was teaching Kira to do the same. "Again," he said. Watching as she reset her stance in the cargo bay they had converted into a training area. Kira wiped sweat from her forehead and raised the practice weapon once more. She was tired. Marcus could see it in her eyes, but she did not complain. She never complained. "Remember what I told you?" Marcus said. "Do not think about the rules. Do not think about what is proper. Think about survival. My ancestors trained with masters," Kira said. "They learned the sacred forms of combat that have been passed down for generations. And where are your ancestors now?" It was harsh, but Kira nodded in acceptance. "Dead," she said. "All dead, because they fought with honor against enemies who had none. I am not going to teach you to fight like them. I am not going to teach you to fight like them. I am going to teach you to win." He came at her fast, and Kira reacted on instinct. She dodged his first strike, blocked his second, and then did something unexpected. She grabbed a loose cargo strap from the floor and whipped it toward his face. Marcus barely managed to duck, and when he looked up, Kira had already moved to a better position. She was grinning. "Like that?" she asked. "Exactly like that," Marcus said, and he felt pride swelling in his chest. "Your ancestors would have considered that dishonorable. My ancestors are dead. I would rather be alive." She was learning not just how to fight, but how to think like a human, desperate, creative, willing to do whatever it took to survive. It was the only way they were going to make it through this. As the weeks passed, Kira transformed before his eyes. The frightened servant girl who had flinched at loud noises was gone. In her place stood a warrior, sharp and dangerous and ready to face whatever the galaxy threw at her. She learned to shoot, starting with small pistols and working her way up to rifles that were almost as tall as she was. She learned to pilot, and soon she could fly the Wanderer almost as well as Marcus could. She learned to look her enemies in the eye and make them afraid. But more than that, she learned to hope again. "Tell me about Earth," she asked one night as they drifted through an empty system. Hiding from a collective patrol, Marcus was surprised by the question. He rarely talked about his homeworld, because the memories were bittersweet. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Kira said. "I want to understand why humans are so different from other species." Marcus thought for a moment, searching for the right words. "Earth is a brutal place," he said finally. "Or at least it used to be. For most of our history, we spent our time killing each other over land and resources and ideas. That does not sound different from other species. The difference is that we never stopped fighting, even when we should have given up, even when every rational calculation said we had lost. Humans kept going, He told her about the great wars and the great disasters, about plagues and famines and catastrophes that should have ended their species. He told her about the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, the irrational belief that tomorrow could always be better. "We are not stronger than other species," Marcus said. "We are not smarter or faster or more advanced, but we never, ever give up. And eventually, that stubbornness becomes something like strength." Kira listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. "That is why you help me," she said. "When every logical choice said to turn me over." Humans are not very good at being logical, Marcus admitted with a smile. "I think I like that about you." As they ran from system to system, something strange began to happen. Whispers spread across the galaxy. Traveling faster than any ship, the lost heir lives a human protects her. Flame of the Dominion still burns at first. It was just rumors. Scraps of hope passed between species who remembered what the Ashenvale Dominion had been. Then the rumors became something more on a small moon in the Varth cluster. An old soldier approached Marcus at a refueling station. He was ancient. His scales faded and cracked, but his eyes were sharp. "I know who she is," the soldier said quietly. "I served the Dominion when I was young, before the Collective burned everything." Marcus reached for his weapon, but the soldier held up his hands in peace. "I am not here to turn you in," he said. "I am here to offer my sword." "What?" "There are others like me," the soldier explained. "Those who never forgot. Those who have been waiting for a sign that the old ways might return. Word has spread that the heir lives, that she is protected by a human who refuses to surrender." Marcus did not know what to say. "We are being hunted by the most powerful force in the galaxy," he said. "Joining us is suicide." The old soldier smiled, showing teeth that were worn but still sharp. "I have lived too long already. Let me spend my final years serving a worthy cause." He was the first, but he was not the last as weeks turned into months. More allies found Thema noble house that had hidden in the outer reaches, surviving by pretending to be simple traders, a group of pilots whose ancestors had flown for the Dominion Navy engineers and scientists and warriors, all drawn by the same impossible hope. The Collective had spent 200 years trying to erase the memory of the Ashenvale Dominion. But memory is harder to kill than flesh. Kira watched these allies arrive with wonder in her eyes. "I never knew," she said to Marcus one night. "I never knew anyone still remembered." "Your empire meant something to them," Marcus said. "You mean something to them. I do not know how to be what they need me to be. You do not have to know yet. Just keep fighting, keep surviving. The rest will come." The Collective noticed the gathering resistance, and they responded with overwhelming force. They stopped sending bounty hunters and assassins. They sent fleets at the Battle of Corvin Station, a small outpost where the resistance had gathered supplies. Marcus watched 3 Collective warships drop out of hyperspace. They were massive, bristling with weapons, crewed by soldiers who had never known. Defeat the resistance had 2 armed freighters and a handful of fighters. It should have been a slaughter, but Marcus had a plan. "Everyone listen to me," he said, over the communication channel. "The Collective expects us to fight like a proper fleet. They expect formations and tactics and honor. What do you suggest instead?" asked the old soldier who had become their informal military advisor. "We cheat." The Collective commander watched his sensors with growing confusion as the rebel ships scattered in all directions. This was not how battles were fought. There was no formation, no strategy, just chaos, and then the chaos turned deadly. The rebels had hidden explosive charges in the debris field around the station, and when the Collective ships moved to pursue, the debris exploded, shields flickered, and failed breaches opened across the lead warship. And then the rebels struck, coming from every direction at once, targeting weak points with surgical precision. It was not elegant. It was not honorable, but it worked when the battle ended. 2 collective warships were drifting wrecks, and the third was fleeing into hyperspace. The rebels had won against impossible odds. They had won. Kira stood on the bridge of one of the captured ships, looking out at the stars with tears in her eyes. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "It does." Word of the victory spread even faster than the whispers had the lost. Heir had struck back against the collective. She had won, and she was coming for more across the galaxy. Those who had given up hope began to believe again. The ashes were stirring, and from those ashes, something new was beginning to rise. The war began not with a battle, but with a voice. Kira stood on the bridge of the captured dreadnought that had become their flagship, her violet skin illuminated by the glow of 1,000 holographic screens. Behind her stood Marcus, steady and calm as always. Before her stood a camera that would broadcast her image across the entire galaxy. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked. Kira took a deep breath and nodded. "I have been hiding my whole life," she said. "I think it is time to stop." The signal went out on every frequency the resistance could access, hijacking commercial broadcasts and military channels alike. In the great halls of the Collective Council, screens flickered to life without warning. In crowded marketplaces on 100 worlds, people stopped and stared. In the dark corners of space where outcasts and refugees gathered, hope kindled like a flame. Kira spoke. "My name is Calithversarin," she said, and her voice was steady despite the fear she felt. "I am the last surviving heir of the Ashenvale Dominion, and I am here to tell you that the Collective has lied to you." She told them everything. She told them about the empire her ancestors had built, not through conquest, but through cooperation. She told them about the worlds the Collective had burned because they refused to submit. She told them about the species they had enslaved and the history they had erased. "They want you to believe that the Dominion was evil," Kira continued, "that destroying it was necessary. But I ask you this, if the Dominion was so terrible, why has the Collective spent 200 years hunting down every person who carries its memory?" She paused, letting the question hang in the silence. "They are afraid," she said. "Afraid of what you might remember, afraid of what you might become if you knew the truth." And then she turned slightly, gesturing to the human who stood behind her. "This is Marcus Cole," she said. "He is a human, a species that most of you consider weak and foolish. He found me when I had nothing, when I was being sold as a servant to pay a merchant's debt." She looked at Marcus with warmth in her silver eyes. He did not know who I was. He did not know that protecting me would make him an enemy of the most powerful force in the galaxy. All he knew was that I needed help, and he helped me. Her voice grew stronger. "That is what humans are. They do not calculate advantage. They do not weigh the odds and choose the safe path. They see someone in need and they act, even if it costs them everything. The Collective calls this weakness," she continued. "But I call it something else. I call it strength. The kind of strength that built the Dominion. The kind of strength that can build something new." She raised her chin and spoke the words that would echo across history. "To all those who remember the Dominion, to all those who have suffered under the Collective, to all those who have dreamed of something better, the war begins now. Join us. Fight with us. And together we will build a galaxy where fear is not the only law." The broadcast ended, and for a long moment no one spoke. Then the communications array lit up like a star-going supernova. Messages poured in from every corner of known space worlds that had been conquered by the Collective, pledged there. Support noble houses revealed themselves, abandoning centuries of hiding, and humans, the scattered colonies of Earth's children spread across the Orion Arm, began to volunteer. They came with ships and weapons, and something the Collective had never learned to counter: the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. A human captain named Elena Vasquez arrived with 3 armed freighters, And 200 volunteers. We heard the broadcast, she told Marcus. And we came. You know what you are getting into? Marcus asked. Elena smiled, and there was fire in her eyes. The collective thinks they can bully the galaxy forever because no one will stand up to them. I think it is time to prove them wrong. More humans followed, and with them came ideas that made the collective admirals tear their hair out in frustration. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the rules of engagement that had governed galactic warfare for millennia. They improvised. They adapted. They turned disadvantages into opportunities. At the Battle of Threshold Station, a human pilot flew her damaged ship directly into the bridge of a collective cruiser, ejecting at the last moment and being picked up by a passing shuttle. The cruiser's entire command structure was wiped out in an instant at the siege of Vela Prime. Human engineers built weapons from salvage that should not have worked, but somehow did. They strapped mining lasers to cargo haulers and turned them into makeshift warships. They used explosive decompression to clear enemy boarding parties from captured vessels. They refused to die when they should have died, and they refused to lose when they should have lost. The collective high command had studied human tactics before the war began. But studying was not the same as understanding. They could not predict what humans would do, because humans themselves often did not know. They acted on instinct, on emotion, on a bone-deep conviction that giving up was not an option. This is madness. A collective admiral was reported to have said after losing his third fleet to human tactics. They do not fight with logic. They fight with insanity. But it was not insanity. It was hope that had been denied for 200 years. Finally given permission to burn, Kira watched her rebellion grow with wonder and gratitude. She had spent her entire life believing that she was alone, that she was the last ember of a dead fire. Now she stood at the head of an army that grew larger every day, and at her side stood the human who had made it all possible. You should address the council, she said to Marcus one evening as they reviewed battle plans in her quarters. Me? Marcus looked surprised. I am just a salvager. I do not belong in front of councils. You are the reason any of this is happening, Kira said. Without you, I would be dead or captured. Without humans, we would have lost a dozen times over. The others did the fighting, and you gave them something to fight for. You showed them that one person, one ordinary person, could stand against an empire and refuse to break. She took his hand, and Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. Please, she said. Speak to them. Let them see the man who saved me. Marcus agreed. Though he was not comfortable with public speaking, he stood before the Council of Rebellion leaders, a diverse group of species united by nothing except their hatred of the collective and their hope for something better. I am not good at speeches, Marcus began, so I will keep this simple. He looked around at the faces watching him, alien and strange, but somehow familiar in their determination. Before I met Kira, I was nobody. I flew a broken ship through empty space, looking for junk to sell. I did not have a cause. I did not have a mission. I was just trying to survive. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When I took her aboard my ship, I did not know who she was. I just knew that she needed help, and where I come from. That is enough. Humans are not special, he continued. We are not stronger or smarter or more advanced than anyone in this room. But we have one quality that has gotten us through every disaster our species has ever faced. He met their eyes. One by one, we do not give up, ever, no matter how bad things get. No matter how hopeless the odds seem, we keep fighting, and eventually, we win. The collective is powerful, but they have a weakness. They think they have already won. They think the galaxy will always bow to them, because it always has. His voice grew harder. They are wrong. We are going to show them that there is something in the universe that cannot be conquered by fear, And when this is over, every species in the galaxy will know that hope is stronger than tyranny. The council chambers erupted in cheers. And for a moment, Marcus felt embarrassed by the attention. But then he saw Kira smiling at him from across the room. And he realized something: he had found his purpose, not salvage, not survival, but this: standing with those who needed him, fighting for something that mattered. It was a good feeling. The war continued, and the rebellion grew stronger. World after world rose up against the collective. Fleet after fleet fell to tactics that should not have worked but did, and at the center of it all stood a human salvager and an alien princess. United by something stronger than blood or politics, they were united by hope, and hope, as the galaxy was learning, was impossible to kill. The final battle would be fought above Ashenvol Prime, the ancient throne world of the Dominion. For 200 years. The collective had used it as an administrative center, building their cold towers atop the bones of Kira's ancestors. Now, the rebellion had come to reclaim it. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the tactical display with growing tension. Their fleet was impressive, built from captured ships and donated vessels and things that should not have been space-worthy but somehow were. But the collective fleet waiting for them was 3 times larger. The odds are not good, Admiral Sorath said, his scaled face grim. He was the old soldier who had first approached Marcus all those months ago, and he had become one of the rebellion's most trusted commanders. When have the odds ever been good? Marcus, replied. Kira stood at the center of the bridge, her silver eyes fixed on the holographic image of her homeworld. She had never seen it before. Not in person. Her mother had sent her away when she was just a child, too young to remember the gardens and palaces that had once made Ashenvol the jewel of the galaxy. Now those gardens were gone, paved over by collective efficiencies. Palaces had been demolished to make room for administrative buildings, but the catacombs remained. Ancient tunnels beneath the surface that only the royal family knew about, tunnels that led directly to the throne room. The fleet will keep them busy, Kira said, turning to face Marcus. But the real battle will be fought on the ground. Marcus nodded. They had planned this for months while the fleet engaged a collective navy in orbit. A small strike team would slip past their defenses and land on the surface. They would use the catacombs to reach the heart of the collective command structure, and there, Kira would reclaim her throne. I still do not like you going down there, Marcus said, and I still do not care what you like, Kira replied with a smile. I am going, and you are coming with me. Would not have it any other way. The battle began at dawn. Ashenvol time. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace in a scattered formation that made the collective commanders laugh with contempt. They expected another chaotic human attack, easily countered once you knew what to expect. They were wrong. This time, the chaos was a cover, while the rebel ships danced and weaved and drew the collective fleet out of position. A single shuttle slipped through the gaps in their formation. It was small enough to be ignored, fast enough to avoid pursuit, and piloted by a human who'd spent a lifetime flying through places he should not be. Marcus brought them down through the atmosphere, dodging anti-aircraft fire and automated defense systems. Behind him sat Kira and a dozen of their best fighters. All armed and ready, the shuttle landed hard in a dried riverbed that had once flowed through the royal gardens. Now it was just dust and stone, all trace of beauty erased. But beneath the surface, the catacombs waited. They entered through a hidden door that Kira's mother had shown her in dreams. Memories passed down through a connection that even the collective could not sever. The tunnels were dark and cold, but Kira moved through them with confidence. She knew this place, even though she had never walked here before, was in her blood. They encountered collective patrols twice, and both times the rebels struck fast and silent. Human soldiers fought alongside alien warriors, their different styles blending into something new and deadly. The collective never stood a chance above them. The battle in orbit was turning. The rebel fleet had taken heavy losses, But they had inflicted heavier ones. Human captains made sacrifices that shocked the collective commanders, ramming damaged ships into enemy vessels rather than retreating alien. Pilots performed maneuvers that should have been impossible, pushing their ships beyond all limits, and slowly, inexorably, the collective line began to buckle in the throne room of Ashembel Prime. The collective High Council gathered in emergency session. They were the rulers of the galaxy, the beings who had ordered the destruction of the Ashenvale Dominion 2 centuries ago. Some of them had been there that day, old enough to remember the screams of the dying. They had thought those screams would echo forever. They had thought their victory was eternal. Now they looked at the tactical displays with growing fear. This is impossible, the council leader said, his voice trembling. No force in the galaxy can defeat the collective. The humans are not a force, one of his advisors replied. They are a disease. They infect others with their madness. Then we will cure them. Order our remaining ships to target their vessels. Kill every human in the system. But before the order could be given, the doors to the throne room exploded inward. Marcus came through first. His weapon blazing behind him came Kira, moving with the grace she had learned from her training and the fury she had inherited from her ancestors. The council guards tried to stop them, but the rebels were too fast, too determined, too human in their refusal to accept defeat. In moments, it was over. The council members cowered before Kira, their ancient faces twisted with terror. She walked past them without a word and ascended the steps to the throne. It was old, older than the collective, older than the Dominion itself. It had been carved from a single piece of stone taken from a mountain that no longer existed, and for 200 years it had sat empty, waiting. Kira turned and lowered herself onto the throne. Something changed in that moment. Something that everyone in the room could feel. It was as if the universe itself shifted, acknowledging what had happened. The lost heir had come home. It is over, she said, and her voice rang with authority she had never known she possessed. The collective is finished. The council leader found his courage, or what remained of it. You cannot win, he snarled. Even if you take this world, we have 100 others. We will rebuild, we will return, and we will destroy everything you have created. Kira looked at him with cold silver eyes. No, she said. You will not. She gestured, and her soldiers brought up a holographic display. It showed worlds across the galaxy, worlds that had been collective strongholds for centuries. Every single one of them was in rebellion. The broadcast Kira had made had done more than inspire hope. It had triggered uprisings that had been planned in secret for generations. The collective had always believed that fear was enough to control the galaxy. They had been wrong. Your empire is burning, Kira said, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. The council leader sagged, all fight leaving him. It was over. It was truly over in the hours that followed. The collective fleet surrendered. Their soldiers laid down their weapons, and across the galaxy, beings of every species celebrated a victory they had never dared to believe was possible. Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking what had once been the royal gardens. Kira would restore them. He knew she would restore everything that had been taken. She found him there as the sun set, painting the sky in colors he had never seen before. The council wants to negotiate terms, she said, but I wanted to speak with you first. What about? She came to stand beside him, and for a moment they simply watched the sun set together. The restored Dominion will need allies, Kira said, and I would like humanity to be the first. I cannot speak for all humans, I know, but you can speak for yourself. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made his heart beat faster. The Dominion wants to offer humanity everything, she said. Territory, technology, wealth beyond imagining. And what do you want to offer me? Kira smiled, and it was the same smile she had shown him on that first day aboard the Wanderer. When she had finally begun to believe that hope was possible, "I want to offer you a place at my side," she said, "not as a subject, not as a servant, but as a friend." Marcus thought about everything they had been through together. He thought about the chase and the battles and the moments of quiet in between. He thought about the girl who had been sold as payment and the woman who now sat upon a throne. "I think I would like that," he said. Kira took his hand, and together they watched the stars come out. The galaxy had changed. An empire that had ruled through fear was crumbling. A new power was rising, built on hope and justice and the stubborn human belief that tomorrow could always be better. And at the heart of it all stood a salvager and a princess, united by something stronger than politics or power. They were united by friendship, and as the news of their victory spread across the stars, other species began to look at humans differently. They had always seen humans as strange, as foolish, as too emotional to be taken seriously. But now they understood something new. Humans would help you not for profit or power, but simply because you needed help. Humans would stand beside you against impossible odds, not because they expected to win, but because standing was the right thing to do. Humans would never, ever give up. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through the ages. Hope was not weakness, kindness was not foolishness, and sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could change everything on Earth. In the schools where children learned about the history of their species, a new story was added to the curriculum. It was the story of Marcus Cole, a salvager who accepted an alien servant as payment and learned she was the heir to a lost empire. Was the story of how one ordinary human changed the fate of the galaxy. It was the story of what humanity could be at its best, and it always ended the same way, with the words Marcus had spoken when asked why he had risked everything for a stranger. She needed help. He had said, "That is enough." The children would repeat those words, memorizing them like